And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 10. My name is Alex.
And I'm Haley.
And you are listening to The Mission Debrief. We are into our second season, but before we get to that, there are quite a few things that have been going on around the Honor Flight community and family. Let's talk about some events, some businesses that are very important. But first of all, this season, once again, is sponsored. Season 2 is sponsored by
Specialty Gas House.
So let's talk about Specialty Gas House for a minute. Speaking of which.
Yeah, so we had the privilege a couple of weeks ago of going to the last cookout of the season. Usually it runs, I think it's Memorial Day through kind of Labor Day.
Is that like pool rules?
Yeah, kind of like pool rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically at the location of Specialty Gas House, their storefront, they do a cookout. And for $5, you can get, whatever meat they're cooking.
A lot of hamburger.
And a big old sausage.
Yep.
Was it chorizo?
No.
I can't remember. But anyways, and then chips and a drink.
It was a Bahama Mama bratwurst hybrid.
Well, we don't know. We didn't eat it. But you had the burger.
Yeah.
But what was really cool, so we went to kind of see the sponsor a little bit because they've been so good to us, and also asked that we be part of their, they did a raffle or a silent auction. I think they did both, but we were part of the silent auction where you could donate money and have a Guardian spot on one of our flights this fall. So we did 2 seats of that, which one of them was or is going to be on the next, or was on the last flight and is on the next flight. I don't know. There's two, I think one in November, one in October. I think that's what it is.
Yep.
Regardless, that was pretty cool. And so when we got there, it was cool to actually see the storefront and see they have
an outside that's on the inside.
Yes. Yes, I know what you're saying. So
try to explain that.
It's a showroom,
Yeah, it's a showroom.
kind of esque.
Yeah.
And they had a bunch of grills, fireplaces, because they're gas, right? It's not just
They had a lot of
grilling.
spice racks that were huge.
Yeah, which smelled so
I've got some
good.
video. I was doing it in slow motion because they're huge. I was like a child back there spinning them over and over like sunglasses racks.
My favorite thing in the store was in the back, there was a teeny tiny green egg grill.
Green eggs and ham.
No.
Oh.
Aren't they called green eggs or eggs?
Must be.
I am not a grilling expert, so
No.
I'm insulting everyone. But because Egg Fest is really big, and Specialty Gas House is, that's their jam. Yeah, the big green egg. So they had a mini one, like a teeny tiny kid's toy version with teeny tiny kebabs, and it was really cute. And I was wondering if that was for sale, and if so, could someone let me know? Okay, thanks. My email is outreach@honorflightch.org. So we got to capture some footage of that. And again, we're so grateful to Specialty Gas House. We encourage you to check back some of our earlier episodes where we talk a little bit more about their mission, what other organizations they sponsor, as well as just the impact that they have here especially in Central Ohio.
Yeah. You can check them out, Specialty Gas House, on Facebook as well as Instagram. They're at 4500 Indianola Avenue, here in Columbus. So,
and I think their grilling classes might be full for this next season, but definitely check it out. Give them a call in case they have cancellations.
I had asked the guys about it because I didn't know a lot about their grilling classes, and they had given me a flyer.
Yeah.
It was not a flyer, but literally the menu, the kind of breakdown of the whole program that they go through. He had listed off actually some pretty well-known cooks, grill masters that have come through, and they have, as they're cooking, they have mirrors that are flipped and rotated, so you can see what is going on.
So cool.
Seeing on their grill, which is pretty neat. But they give you, exactly what spices are there, what meats.
Wow.
And they go through, they answer questions as they're doing it, gives tips and tricks. And the menu, I don't know. I'm a boy dad. So we got some macaroni and cheese. We got hot dogs. And these things were like lobster, squid souffles. You know what I mean? So
lobster, squid souffles.
It's a big word. So
I'm assuming that's not really on the menu.
No. But these guys were cooking more than burgers, right? So they are way above my level. But cool. Really nice, really cool guys. We met some Honor Flight veterans that were actually eating there at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really neat.
Yeah.
So, and fun fact, you can right around the corner adopt a cat from Cat Welfare. So
Yeah.
Maybe they should do like a partnership program. So
A twofer. You get a burger and a cat.
yeah, I got my kitty there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, well, several. Anyways, so Specialty Gas House, again, sponsoring this next season of the podcast, which is really generous.
Yes,
and we're
thank you.
excited to continue that partnership. And then speaking of sponsors, Mission 144, which we flew just a few days ago, September 4th, was sponsored by Vance Outdoors. So about a month or so ago, I want to say early August, we had the Vance Outdoor Car Show.
Yep.
And this is a big deal in the Honor Flight community as well. And from what I understand, also in the car show community. And I have never had the privilege of going before because I've always lived in DC.
This is my second year going.
Really?
Yeah, to the car show.
Oh, that's cool.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah, it was really neat. I'd never actually even been to a car show before, which I'm learning. If you're in the Honor Flight community and you've never been to a car show, what are you doing?
Right.
Come on out. So Vance Outdoors has been a longtime sponsor of ours. They're a yearly sponsor, which is incredible and so humbling for us. And what's really neat about Vance Outdoors and this partnership specifically, to me at least, is kind of also the partnership that comes, and he'll kill me for talking about this, but Boots.
Yep.
If you've been to our welcome home, you will know that we have an MC, Boots, just goes by Boots. I could say his whole name, but that feels like it would be doing a disservice to his brand. So he is the host of Autosmarts Radio, presented by Germain Honda of Dublin. He has a vast network of folks in the Central Ohio community. So places like Westerville Automotive, Dart. He always tells me take my cars there. He's helped me buy a used car. But he also is he's so incredibly dedicated to the mission of Honor Flight and honoring veterans.
Yep.
And so with him and the partnership with Vance Outdoors, as well as the network that kind of comes through Boots, this sponsorship has taken off and has been, like I said, a yearly thing. Now, something cool about the Vance Outdoors car show is that there's two locations. The way I understand it, there's two locations, one near Cincinnati-ish, and then the one in Obetz, which is our territory. So Cincinnati and where the location of that second store is in the territory of Tri-State Honor Flight.
Yep.
So Tri-State Honor Flight has that southwest corner
Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio.
of Ohio, and then Indiana, Kentucky. And so the money that's raised gets split in some way. There's like a formula to it between Tri-State and Honor Flight Columbus, which is really neat because I got to meet the director. I think they're volunteer there, and got to meet him and talk a little bit to some Tri-State folks, which is always cool to kind of get to know and network with other honor flights. So the car show was a huge success. People were awarded for the cars they were showing. It was cool. I felt like I got a little education on car shows. And then that was really fun because it kind of pumped us up for the flight season. Of course, the first flight being sponsored by Vance. So we took that flight, like I said, September 4th, which was a week ago, Thursday, from when this podcast will be released. And I guess the best thing to do next is kind of dive into the veterans themselves, the reason we're doing this whole thing.
Yeah.
So Mission 144, our oldest veteran was 96 years old. Our youngest veteran was 64.
Okay.
We had two female veterans. Majority of our veterans were Vietnam veterans, which we see. This is pretty normal. And one thing that was really cool to me is, first of all, it's a small world that we live in, especially if you're in the Honor Flight Columbus world. And I knew about this gentleman, Mr. Wilson, because I spoke with his daughter over the summer. He is a Korean War veteran, and he went in just before the Korean War and then was in during the Korean War. And he was so cool. Do you want to talk?
I honestly made my day. The guy has shoe game like no other. So I love shoes, especially Converse. And Mr. Wilson had
they were really cool.
Yeah, they were really cool. Really cool Chucks on.
They were like a neutral color.
And so at one point, I think I had convinced him that at the end of the flight, we could trade shoes at the airport.
Ew, you're nasty.
Yeah,
one.
even though they were 4 sizes too big, and but he was chill, and
He's
he's like,
so
yeah.
cool.
I kept asking him throughout the day. I'm like, hey, are you stressed out? And he goes, no, not at all.
He
and
was
I'm like,
living the dream.
I'm like, if you're not stressed, I'm not stressed. So we had a good time.
Yeah, he was really, really cool. And something that was really neat about him, well, here's a little bit about his story. So like I said, he is 96 years old, served just before the Korean War. So the gap between World War II and Korea, and then Korea. He was in the army. He served in the military police, and he was boots on ground in Korea. So he served in combat there. And his daughter and granddaughter, actually.
Yep.
So I had spoke with his daughter this summer and was just kind of, we were talking through what the day looks like, and she really wanted to be there at World War II when he was presented the flag. Yep. And so she came from Columbus, and her daughter flew in from Houston. They met us at World War II, spent maybe an hour or two with us, and then went back to the airport and flew to Columbus for the welcome home. So they were there before us at the welcome home.
Yep.
So they got to see kind of this intimate look at not only the day itself, but then be part of that welcome home, which I think was so neat. That's what I would want to do if I had a family member doing it.
Yeah, to see your family member, whether it be grandfather, husband, son, actually receive the flag. Pretty cool.
We don't get that very often.
Yeah, we don't get that very often whatsoever. And then at Vietnam, holding the picture.
Yeah, talk about that picture. Oh, okay, I'll talk about that picture. So, Mr. Wilson's daughter, sidebar, who are we that we've not yet talked about Rodney Ellis on this podcast? Because we talk about him in the beginning of every episode at the airport. Rodney is our team lead for our ground crew. So if you recall, he takes care of everything that goes on in the morning and in the evening at the airport side of things. And his dentist is Mr. Wilson's daughter. And she's the one that came to DC and saw her dad with the presentation. So her husband, she recently lost her husband, who was a Vietnam veteran. So she, as part of that special time that she spent with her dad at the Vietnam Memorial, she printed out a picture of her husband and had her dad hold that picture right there at the memorial, it's always so powerful, I think, to see the pictures. And we've done that before with other people who either couldn't fly or had a memory or whatever. But how cool was it to see the generations of service represented and then have her daughter there for that too? Because that would have been her dad.
Yep.
So that was really cool.
Yeah. Pretty easygoing guy. Amazing man.
Yeah.
More swagger and confidence than you can ever imagine. Just smiling throughout the whole day. He said he had a blast. So
yeah, he was really cool.
Yeah.
So, and so he, along with all the other veterans that joined us, got to the airport bright and early between 5:45 a.m. and 6 a.m. That morning. We had a little bit of a delay with the plane.
I think you always forget one thing.
What?
Who else was there in the morning? Coco.
Oh yeah. I was like, Rodney? Yeah, Coco was back. I think she missed the last flight, I want to say. Yep. So it was good to see her back in her little tutus, her patriotic tutus. Yep. Coco's a dog, by the way. I'm just in case you don't know who Coco is. And yeah, so we had a good group of people there in the morning. It was a cooler morning to start out with, after, coming back from the summer hiatus. So that kind of helps you get into the mood for the fall flight season. And then after our short delay, just waiting for the plane to come in, I think they had some issues from where they were coming from, but then weather was kind of weird. So we were able to load up. We did hit a schedule conflict. We've talked about before how getting to Arlington National Cemetery is, we have a very specific gate time and changing of the guard time. So we can't miss that. We can't risk missing that. So Beth kind of preemptively rescheduled that for the afternoon so that we would make sure we could get all of our stops in, which I thought was a really smart move.
She handled it very well.
Yeah, very well. Pivoted very quickly, and the rest of us just kind of followed.
Never ceases to amaze me. She's calling Arlington as we're catching a bus while trying
loading, 100 some people.
Yeah. And she's like, no, we got to reschedule. I'm like, what? I just I blew my nose and sent a text.
all
How
of a
did you do
sudden-
all that?
Yeah, she's good. She's
Yeah.
very good. And she knows exactly who to call at exactly the right moment. She's always prepared to pivot like that. And that's something about her leadership that I really admire.
Yep.
So once we loaded up the buses, we went ahead and started our day at Iwo Jima, the Marine Corps War Memorial, which honestly, we don't go there first thing in the morning all the time. And I kind of liked that. And it was something I noticed this time, which I've seen this before, but I kind of stepped back and like thought about it a little bit more. I was walking up to just take pictures of people taking pictures of the memorial. And I don't know if we had, like, I should have pulled this statistic, but I don't know if we had more Marines than usual. I just happened to see like 3 or 4 Marines, and you could tell this had been the first time that they had ever been to their memorial before. And they just truly lit up. I mean, their face lit up seeing this memorial, and they just like, wow, just like looking straight up. And there was something about for me, it was something very striking about seeing the size of the memorial and then the veteran. Mm-hmm. And the veteran being so much smaller because the memorial is massive. And then you're surrounded by the context of kind of the outskirts of the downtown, where downtown, right before you get to Georgetown, kind of DC, and then residential area. There's something, there's something very striking about seeing this, kind of small veteran in comparison to the life around him. And then you just start thinking of the layers, like, the service that they had, what they saw, what they were a part of, the camaraderie they experienced, and then the men and women who are not standing next to them anymore, whether, they died, in their service or just, of age later. I don't know. There's just something kind of serene about it.
I did notice a lot more, as you said, a lot more veterans, Marine veterans, because as I noticed, I was looking, there was groups of, typically you get like 2 Marines that just met each other on the flight, posing for a picture. Well, I saw groups of 2, 3, and then I saw groups of like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, they're just all buddies. But then I looked and I'm like, no, they all had Marine hats on.
Yes.
And I'm just
they
like,
were buddies. They just
yeah.
were.
And then they were already joking, had their arms around each other. And
that was the first stop of the day.
Yeah. And that's the camaraderie they had in that. Yeah. And that's pretty neat. So
it was really cool. It was a beautiful morning for it too.
Yeah. I think, like you said, kind of a different perspective. I know you guys hear us talk a lot about, going throughout the day, the different memorials. But like Haley said, this one was scheduled a little different because of the delay. I think it's a good perspective to have those. So we had, the Marine Corps Memorial at Iwo Jima in the morning, and we'll get to it. But something amazing for me, Arlington in the evening time, hit a little bit harder for me that time. Also, because it had rained, which we'll talk about. There was less people there. And so the different perspectives that I got to actually see things that I didn't notice before, it was pretty cool. So anyway, Iwo Jima.
You bring up a good point about the schedule change. As staff, and then as somebody who flies very often, we have a schedule that works and allows for us to pivot during the day if we need to. But for the most part, we make some general pattern of that schedule. Like in general, we're keeping it in some way. I think it's kind of important to throw us a little bit because then you're out of that routine, and then you tend to notice things like the veteran, in comparison to the size of his memorial.
Yeah, and I think it's the way, the sun hits, or like we're there in the morning time. And it's funny you mention it too. I always remember talking about, I don't know if it was Beth or who I was talking to, but a little bit ago, after 10 plus flights now, I remember my first flight, Iwo Jima was first thing in the morning. So the second, third flight, I'm like, okay, that's how this goes. This is the schedule that goes. We didn't do that again. We never did that again. I'm like, that was really, I didn't know the logistics and how things worked back then. Sure. So I didn't know there was a delay, at the time. But,
and that's what we want our veterans to experience, is that very thing.
Yeah. So like I said, every mission for every veteran, they still get the same experiences going out, throughout in a general sense, but it's always different. So
it is. Yeah. And then we headed from there. We went to the Air Force Memorial. And it's always interesting to me because right now there's so much construction going on around there because they're expanding Arlington Cemetery. And you can, like, one day it's going to be surrounded by gravestones, which is interesting to think about because the generation that we're currently predominantly serving with honor flights all over the country is Vietnam. And that's the generation that will likely, I'm not saying causing the expansion, but I guess causing the expansion of Arlington.
Well, if you think about baby boomer era,
Yeah, exactly.
Because from the beginning to the end, there's quite a few years
Right.
in between. However,
Right.
not to get on a side note, but healthcare has changed. They had to expand more hospitals, more nursing homes, more collective things for, the VAs had to expand a lot too.
Right.
Because of the population of veterans, because the
Right.
mass population of that.
And you compare the baby boomers having children
Yep.
to the need for servicemen and women during Vietnam.
Yep.
So I think, I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting thought to think, okay, right now we're surrounded by construction, it's all dirt, but this is going to end up being, I'm not saying Vietnam veterans are going to surround the Air Force Memorial. I'm just saying like the expansion in general being necessary because of that. And then we'll eventually get to, global war on terrorism and Gulf War and things like that, which are all populations that we are serving in some capacity. So,
And there might be other memorials by then,
Yeah.
surrounding with those.
which hopefully, because, they've already broken ground on the Gulf War Memorial, Desert Storm, Desert Shield.
And I know-
then they've got a location for GWAT.
Yeah, and I know. In comparison, as far as being surrounded, is just a thought I've had just now. Air Force Memorial, the only one that's necessarily surrounded by the Arlington Cemetery that you would, when it's
Correct.
done, you'll see surrounding you.
Yeah.
Now, Iwo Jima, if you looked over the hill,
Yes,
you could
you're
see
close.
it. However, Navy that we stop at, the other ones, are set aside.
They're these two that you're talking specifically about are in Virginia, and the other ones are in DC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
So
that's
because
new.
Arlington is there, you
Now
didn't
you
know
just
that?
blew my mind. No,
So-
I get on the bus. Caesar tells me where we're going, and we're there. So
No, let's be honest. You get off the plane, along with I think most people. They get off the plane and they're like, "Oh, I'm in Washington D.C."
Yeah.
Whether you are at Dulles, where we've been flying into last season and this season, or you fly into Reagan, you're flying into Virginia. You're not in Washington D.C. until you've crossed over the bridge over the Potomac. That's when you're in D.C.
you can say all that, but honestly, we get off the plane, we're in DC the whole day.
Okay.
So
Well, anyways, back to it. And then we headed from there and we went to lunch at the Navy Memorial. I felt like
something we need, and we're not. We don't do politics.
No.
Yeah, we don't do politics. However, we did notice.
that's where I was going with this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, keep going.
I noticed. Everyone noticed.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I'll be ashamed to admit, and probably after this podcast, you'll know. I don't watch the news a lot. I have a lot of things going on. I don't watch the news.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things in the DC metropolitan area to where there's a lot of National Guard deployed.
Yeah, we ran into, I think, 3 groups.
Yeah, 3 different groups.
I mean, there was factually speaking, I think when we saw them, there was like 4 or 5 of them in each stop.
Yeah, but
Very nice.
however, as far as the servicemen that were active, just walking around and
Yeah.
young guys.
Yeah.
And I know as I get older, I realize
They get younger.
Yeah, I'm like these kids are just babies. We got to talk to a couple of the groups, just saying,
Yeah.
hey, thank you, for your service, no matter what. Same as a veteran. Actually, one of the veterans said, "Hey, future veterans," and they pointed at the
That was
the
cool.
guards.
That
Yeah, that
was
was
cool.
really neat. But I think it was pretty cool to see. We do have National Guard that go with us.
Yes.
But to see these
we
guys
meet in
active,
DC,
there was
we've
quite a
talked about
few.
them.
I looked around at a couple of the stops, and the veterans were talking to these young guys, shaking their hands,
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually one of the groups, we were by World War II. There was a group of National Guard that were on patrol, came and talked to the veterans,
Yes.
thanked them for their service, and it was pretty neat to see. And they always get a kick out of the veterans do because they're like
Agreed.
they can see themselves.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, not political, like at all. We're just speaking specifically to the experience we had when we were there with the individuals we met. They were so nice. They were so kind. And and we talked about this on the last episode for last season. There's a connection that active servicemen and women have with our veterans that like you and I don't, because we've never served.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to kind of observe someone of a different generation, like you said, where they can kind of see themselves reflected.
Yep.
And it was weird too, because like you said, like I've been in flight season mode. So preparing for the flight, I'm like all consumed with the logistics of the flight. And I'd had a couple people talk to me a little bit about some concerns in the DC area. So I was mindful of some things. But for us, like the experience we had there was positive in that unfortunately, because of the conflict and whatever that conflict is to you and your opinions on that, the reality was tourism felt down. Plus the time of year, school's back in session for colleges and
that's
for
what I was
high
going to
schools.
say was, I honestly, the streets,
It was empty.
it was empty, which made our commutes a lot quicker in between. And the bus drivers didn't honk as much. I noticed that.
Yeah. Less aggressive drivers.
Yep.
And I don't know, because there's always weirdness with the remote workers back in the office, like different scheduling things, and especially that time in September after the holiday. So there's a bunch of things that
I wouldn't have known any different, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
Because we only saw, a couple, like maybe 12 or less between the few places. But I see that in
a lot of times
Secret Service guys.
Yes.
Because they're always on the national parks. And I'm just like, why are these guys wearing flak jackets around? And they're like, they're Secret Service,
I think too, like for us, because I think a couple of our volunteers had some concerns about it and we talked, and it made me more mindful of like what that might feel like for somebody else, maybe coming from a different perspective or a different life experience. And so I was a little bit more sensitive to that than I would have been otherwise. But I think one reason that you and I and like our staff, we're not as concerned is because we work with the National Guard a lot.
Yep.
And so us seeing them almost felt like, oh, we ordered them, like we said, hey, we requested them, not ordered them.
Yeah.
We requested them to come out. It kind of felt that way. And then as I was reflecting back, it's like, oh yeah, I can totally see how this could be really uncomfortable for somebody, especially if you're more educated or like understanding or have thoughts and feelings about what's going on.
Yeah.
So.
It was, I will say too, it was pretty cool because I know we had talked to a group and, these I want to call them kids. Kids were from Tennessee, Mississippi,
at the Navy.
and they're doing, what they're told. And so I know Trey was with us, and Trey is active.
Our bus driver, yeah.
Navy. And him just talking to them like, hey, where are you from, sort of thing. It made them feel at home because they're away from the home. They're away from their families, sort of thing. And it's like, oh, we're talking to another service member. They felt comfortable. They felt like, hey, we're not, too far away from home. And then our National Guard guys that were with us, when they would walk over, they're higher ranking officers.
Yes.
And you could tell their demeanor changed really quick. When you've got, these low, I don't know, E2,
Entry
E3
level,
guys. Yeah. They got really nervous really
Fresh
quick. He was just like, hey, where are you from? And it's a colonel. And these kids are like, Mississippi,
Yeah, because he didn't our colonel just get promoted to colonel?
He did.
Yeah.
He did. And we won't leak that too much yet because.
Hey, everyone.
Somebody got a big promotion.
They're waiting on his ceremony so his family can all be there, which is really cool.
Pretty neat.
But yeah, and I think too, what was interesting for me, and then we can move forward from this component about the National Guard in DC. Again, it not a political statement of any kind. However, it does show like what I did know going into it and what I was cognizant of and sensitive to, depending on, because we take people, volunteers and veterans who feel, different ways about things. I think what was evident to me is when you actually got to interact with the individual men and women who were serving, it just reminds you of like, for example, Vietnam, like these are just people following orders.
Yep.
And
kids.
So I think that was kind of an interesting parallel. I mean, I'm not comparing that to Vietnam. It's just like the thought of like, oh, there's some controversy around what's going on. And then you meet the individual and you realize like, and this is the whole point of why we exist, why we're even doing the podcast. Yeah. It's the stories of the individuals who served. Mm-hmm. So with that stories, National Guard, we talked to them a lot at Navy. Also at Navy, we met a pair of brothers.
Yes, we did.
Tell me about the pair of brothers.
The pair of brothers, I tried to get them to...
They were Vietnam era.
Yep, I tried to get them to argue. I was trying to instigate quite a few times. I did it at dinner as well. I'd ask them, because they were joking. They were fun dudes. Yeah. And I was like, okay, guys. They didn't no clue what was going on the first time. And I said, which one of you is older? And then it started from there. And he's like looking at me. And I'm like, which one of you is the golden child? Who got in trouble more? Who is smarter? And they're like, oh, he is. No, I am, And I just try to get into fight the whole time, but.
Yeah, they were being so nice to each other, but there was a little sass thrown in, which is good. But they were 2 of 10. There were 5 boys, 5 girls.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. I would love to talk to their guardian and see what was that day really like.
Right.
They seemed really fun. But then we left lunch and we headed over. And at this point, it was a pretty day. It was starting to get a little warm, but I wasn't to the point where it was like toasty. I don't think people were really toasty yet. And then we got to World War II. We did our flag presentation for Mr. Wilson. This is a great place to talk about the volunteer who we asked to bestow this honor upon Mr. Wilson. Cindy is an incredible volunteer. She has been a part of our in-office flight prep team. So this team, led by Judy, who's the team lead of that, they do all of the little things that you think about. So name tags, challenge coins, shirts, mail call, all of the things. They are the ones putting these pieces together and getting it ready for the flight, which is huge because I cannot tell you how long that would take our staff. Like, it would not be possible without them. And they're also just a delight to come in. So Cindy and Jane is also part of that team. And then, like I said, Judy leads that team. And what was really cool is the 3 of them were on the flight as support staff. Mm-hmm. And Cindy, she has had some family stuff going on lately. And so she's been heavy on our hearts. We've just been thinking about her a lot. And then, of course, as you're starting a new season and you think about, okay, who did we miss this summer? Cindy. And so thinking about her dedication to Honor Flight, her capacity to just really selflessly serve, it was a perfect fit to have her present the flag. And she comes from a family of servicemen. So that was, she mentioned that being pretty special when she was able to give the flag to Mr. Wilson. So, but yeah, so we took care of that at World War II, and then we moved on to let everybody kind of do their thing. Korea, and then some people go to Lincoln, and then the Vietnam Memorial. So I think that was about the time after World War II. We had our first rain, like real rain, since I've been working here in a professional capacity. I think it was like 15, 20 minutes of like a torrential downpour.
Yeah. No, so it rained. And honestly, this is the first time that it actually rained before. I know this because I didn't have a bag cover until just recent in my newer bag. It's sprinkled before. We've had mist. I think we've almost had snow before when I've been on them, but a lot of heat.
Yeah, this was steamy. So, and this reminds me, one of my very first flights, which we talked a little bit about in the last episode, the reunion episode when I got to talk with Joe about his flight and getting to spend that time together when it poured. I mean, it poured for a long time. We were drenched. And like, I don't remember if I asked him in the podcast or just like separately in conversation, like privately, but I was like, do you remember when you think about your flight day, do you think about the rain? And he was like, no, I actually kind of forgot it rained until you just told me that. We just talked about that. So the people that all the veterans and volunteers, at least from what I was encountering, were really just positive about it. And I think that's what continues to make Honor Flight such a special experience, is being able to say, yes, this thing happened, whether it be a delay or it be a weather issue. I don't want to say issue because people take it so positively. Yeah. So,
and we always adjust.
And you always adjust, but it takes every single person, veteran, volunteer, staff, being dedicated to having a positive experience. And I just think it's really cool to watch humans come together like that. And so, yeah, it was pretty special.
And it makes you realize there's not a lot of shelter around
There's none.
We saw a big group of people. Actually, I remember looking over and Megan was under there with like 30 veterans under that little,
under
that coffee little hut thing.
Yeah.
No, it was it was amazing time. And like I said, it also brings a little bit of effect for me. I felt a little bit of effect at Vietnam.
Yeah.
'Cause we were trying to hide under the trees. It was raining, and I saw a Guardian pushing veterans, through the rain, and they were still smiling. They were.
Yeah, it's almost like when I look at pictures of it, you can't really tell it was raining because people were just so
But we were wet.
focused. Yeah, but I don't even remember being that wet.
I was.
Oh, you know why? Because Dr. Prawl, our flight doctor, gave me an umbrella.
It's true.
I was like, wait, why wasn't I wet? So anyway, again, just that kindness of like people looking out for people, veterans and volunteers alike. So so then, like our day, we always go from there and then we do dinner at the Women's Memorial.
Not always.
Well, okay, that one time. One thing I wanted to mention while we're kind of in this like Vietnam / dinner part of the conversation. So we had a Guardian. Her name is Rachel. She took her third honor flight on mission 144. And what's really cool, her and I were kind of talking, it's a small world situation. She's friends with somebody I went to like middle school and high school with, used to ride bikes with, like pretty close friends growing up. And she's like my age, so like late 20s, early 30s. And we don't have a ton of people in that demographic serving. And we're always kind of looking at like wanting to have multiple generations represented, because I think that's so much more impactful for the veterans to see how their service spans across generations, their contributions. So her and I were just kind of talking about that. And then I didn't know who she was assigned because, Celeste takes care of all that, our director of volunteers. So she posted this on Facebook after the flight. She said, third honor flight Columbus experience, and I had the privilege of being with Vietnam veteran Deb Purcell. Deb served in the Navy as a hospital corpsman before pursuing a career in nursing and later teaching. Not only did she enlist during a highly contested war, but she also served when many held the incorrect belief that women were not in Vietnam, leading to their service being overlooked or forgotten by the general public. It was a privilege to see Deb receive the honor and respect she greatly deserves for her service, and I'm blessed to have been a part of her honor flight story.
Who is? Can I see that?
Oh, yeah.
The individual. I did. The two women.
Deb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Deb served in Vietnam as a nurse, and that, we don't get as many women as we want to get. Yeah. So
I talked to her, but I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause she seemed like a really sweet lady. And, I think it's really special that Rachel specifically got to, be a part of that, moment, because there's something as a young woman being with a service woman, because I've felt this on flights, even when I'm just chatting with them or interviewing them for their registration with the Military Women's Memorial, having that opportunity to just let their lives as women inspire you and understanding the courage it took to serve. It's different. Not that the men weren't courageous. It's not what I mean to imply. It's just a different kind of courage, and it's a different context they served in. And so not only to come back and have people, hate the fact that you served in Vietnam, but to have people tell you weren't there at all.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine
And not
the
only
burden of
that, especially with the nurses, they were there to help, to save people. You know what I mean? And to be told that you weren't there doing it,
Right. And we talked about this on the last episode of the last season when we were kind of on the tour. We talk about the fact that when we get to the Vietnam Women's Memorial, we talk about the fact that people didn't admit that women were there. They denied that. And people on the flight, like veterans on the flight, get really frustrated by that because they don't know where you're going with the narrative. And it's like, no, they were there. They were there. And when you read accounts and you read about why that memorial exists to begin with, I think it's really important as we educate, especially the youth and the next generations, about, hey, this is what happens when we don't recognize people's service or people's experiences merely because of their gender or the color of their skin or their religion or their socioeconomic class, all of those things, because we see that all of those chapters in our military history in this, relatively young country that we live in. We see how people have been treated differently because of those things and continue to be treated differently because of those things, even in the care they receive, whether it be like through the VA or the recognition they're receiving today. It's just really interesting to see the impact of that. And now Honor Flight has an opportunity to speak into it.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty cool. I will say as a male, I didn't even, I don't have that viewpoint, as far as, having, the young lady as a guardian,
Yeah.
And having that, looking up to somebody like that. I also think it's thinking back upon it and kind of, reflecting, you wouldn't expect, and it's just because of society, not because of the fact that we didn't think that, women were there in Vietnam, but you look at somebody like the veteran we were just talking about and looking at her picture, if she wasn't in that red polo,
I wouldn't know.
no, wouldn't know. And the things that she's seen, unreal.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And that goes back to, again, just stories in general with veterans. I mean, you see, this is a generation, they're not 21 years old anymore. They're not these, excuse me, they're not these, buff built, well, some of them might be, I'm not trying to say, I feel like Frank Cheatham would say.
Oh yeah. Doing push-ups upside down. Yeah.
Yeah. But the reality is, these are grandparents now, great grandparents. Some of them, are living in a broken body because of age or because of what the service was like, or, just life in general. And, a lot of them, it takes a lot to come on an honor flight knowing we're going to talk about my service or not. Service will be talked about whether I engage with it or not. But, I'm going to stand next to other veterans and I'm not going to be at my most peak physical form. I might be in a wheelchair. I might have a cane. I might, struggle to get from here to there or hurt or ache or whatever. And now you're reflecting on a time in your life that you probably left pretty far behind while also in this less physical form of yourself. And I think that's also an interesting element to reflect on because, again, it takes so much trust that the veterans would even want to sign up for this experience. And that's why I keep coming back, because it's like realizing these men and women trust us to provide an experience where they can, leave something behind and take something with them.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. And I know there are accounts, and I've been, in the office talking, I think with Megan actually one time not too long ago, when veterans seem to bail out almost at the last moment because they are uncertain, because they're scared,
Sure.
They don't know the people, which rightfully so. I would be the same way. Like, why would I go?
I was nervous to be a volunteer the first couple times I thought about bailing, because it was like, I don't know, what if I mess it up? What if I...
And if it's, especially if it's a time that, you're, whether you haven't forgiven yourself or, it was a little bit too rough to go and to shed emotions in front of complete strangers, is very brave. So
it's very brave.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the welcome home has such an impact, because you've spent this day reflecting, whether it be verbalizing your service, or maybe not, maybe you didn't talk about your service, but you're still reflecting in some way, or being a part of other people's reflections. And then you get to a welcome home where the welcome home isn't reflective necessarily in nature, it's celebratory. Yeah. And I think that switch provides a conclusion to the experience that allows the healing to kind of come full circle for that moment. Mm-hmm. And then they take that piece home with them, the mail call, where they can read from loved ones or just grateful Americans saying thank you for your service in a way that's so much more intentional because it's in the written language. Because remember, if you say something to them in public, that's perfect. That's awesome. Maybe they get emails or they see an ad on TV or, on Facebook that says, thank our veterans, whatever. But getting in their generation's language on a written piece of paper, thank you for your service. Yeah. Those elements coming together, I think. And even I'm the same way. Just reflecting on, went to IKEA the other day and I wanted the magazine. Yeah. Because a generation of, I want to see it in person. I wanted to be able to flip back and reflect on it. We're dealing with a generation that did deal with newspapers, with print, with letters, with print. Right? And so that element of it means a lot more to them than somebody saying something or a digital message. And I think what's interesting about it is, with technology and time and everything that changes. I was speaking with someone who works with like kind of the engagement and community outreach component of Columbus City Schools last week. And she was just saying how, you know, the technology differences between our veteran population and kids in high school and middle school are crazy. Like, has there ever in the history of man existed such a different experience with technology?
No, not at all.
And so, you know, that can provide an obstacle for the younger generations and veterans to connect. But then she switched it and said, but it can also provide an opportunity. And I loved that thought. And that to me is why it's like, I think if if I wrote a letter to, you know, a 15-year-old friend, like that's going to mean something to them because they don't get that. Yeah. And if I write it to a 55-year-old friend or to a 95-year-old friend, I mean, the written language is just something we shouldn't lose. The print. Now, I used to be an archivist, so I'm partial, but
yeah. Most people, if it's, you know, not a bill, most people don't get written anything if it's not a birthday card.
People are probably not even getting bills anymore.
Right. Like a birthday card. That's when we get a written statement. So
yeah.
I will say too, reflecting upon that in a different note, and I try to look at things in different angles. I know I've talked about in previous podcasts, but the way you said that the welcome home changes the narrative of celebration instead of reflection, right? I think that's huge because if we did not come back, if we just left them with the reflection of everything that they saw, you know, say we went to Arlington National Cemetery for the last thing, then they got on a flight and they went home. Oof. It would be a very somber,
very
feeling.
Raw. Yeah.
So why do veterans, you know, talk about on a flight? Why do they come back to the reunions over the years? Because when they left, they were on the biggest high of their life.
Yeah.
You know, and that's important to come out into the welcome home, for people to come out to celebrate, even if you don't know anybody. You have no idea. You're yelling or thank you for your service or a handshake to one veteran will change the rest of their life.
That is such an important point. And I think this is a great point to kind of start concluding on, because as we look at, you know, we're one flight down, we got 4 more to go. So you can check out our website, honorflightcmh.org. You can see our schedule. It's on our social media, but we've got a flight on September 25th. Oh my gosh, can I do this by memory? September 25th, October 16th, November 6th, and November 13th. If I'm wrong, don't tell Beth. Because I promise I'll be there.
Do you know what time people normally?
Yeah, so kind of mark your calendars for those dates. If you've been to a welcome home, come on back. If you haven't, please think about it, because I think oftentimes when we exist in a community, it's like, yeah, I support, maybe I'll send some money, which is a big deal. Or maybe it's like, no, I support what you're doing. Maybe I don't have the financial conviction to give or the means or whatever, but there's nothing really I can do to change that veteran's life. And that is exactly what you're saying. It's like, no, when you come and you might feel like you're just a face in a crowd and you're nameless in this crowd, but your heart is seen. Yeah. And, it takes a lot, I think. I guess what I want to say is like, kind of what we talked about on the very first episode of the podcast when we were talking about 10,000 veterans and it took 1 + 1 + 1. You don't get 1,500 people at the airport if everybody decided to stay home. Mm-hmm. So it's like, please come on out, because not only do you not know how you will impact a veteran, but you yourself are going to be impacted. Yep. And also like write a letter. Yeah. Write a letter to a veteran, mail it to our office, our P.O. box. Make a sign. Yeah. Bring a flag. Bring a friend.
Just go there and scream.
And bring a lawn chair. People bring lawn chairs and just sit at the airport. Get there around, we recommend 8:30 because you can comfortably pack. Literally one of my favorite flights is when it was the only flight I haven't flown since I started working here. And I stayed back to kind of help with ops on the ground side. And I get to the airport early, around like 7:38, and there's a family with lawn chairs and they ordered pizzas. I mean, this was the night. This is the event. And I just think that's amazing. I think it almost blesses the ground these veterans are going to walk on.
And like I said, if you have family, if you don't have family, come on out.
Yeah.
And if you think that you need friends to come out there, everybody there is a stranger to everybody else. Mm-hmm. You know, these are all veterans from all over Ohio, literally sometimes. And so you're not going to know anybody and you're going to know people when you leave. So
yeah, so true. So come on out to the airport with us and welcome home the Veterans of Mission 145.
Yes. 145, which is on what date again?
No, September 25th.
Okay. I'd
And
try to get you.
We are 2 weeks from the day that this podcast releases.
Yep. So come on out. We appreciate you coming to listen. Season 2 has officially kicked off, and we are in full flight. So we hope you have enjoyed this podcast episode. My name is Alex.
And I'm Haley.
And you are listening to the Mission Debrief. We'll see you guys later.